Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Weekly GCap, the only source you'll ever need to catch up on all the gaming news from the last week. Before we get into it, just so you guys know, these episodes go up every single Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. So if you guys want to catch them as soon as they drop, well, then just be here at that time. We have over 10 stories to go through, so let's just get started immediately. First things first, God of War Ragnarok has sold 11 million units. Honestly, this doesn't really come as a surprise. I believe God of War 1 sold 23 million units the last time that it was reported back in November of last year. Obviously, since Ragnarok has come out, it's probably a little bit higher than that. You know, people play Ragnarok, then they're like, oh, I want to go back and play the original, see what I missed. But that is absolutely amazing. I am so happy for everybody that worked on this game and made this game possible. Unfortunately, I have not gotten to play it yet. I will be snagging a copy very soon, and I am very excited to get into it. But it's always great seeing a game sell really well, especially a game like this that absolutely deserves all the praise and sales that it gets. Hey, mid-editing G here. Somehow I forgot to talk about this story, even though I had it noted down and I was staring at it the entire time. Anyways, just real quick, Xbox is going to be delisting 46 Xbox 360 games, including their add-ons. You can see all of those games' names on your screen right now, so if you want to pause, look at them just in case, feel free to do that. I still have no idea how I forgot to cover this story while I was recording the main bits for this video. That's embarrassing. At least I caught it before it was too late. Anyways, back to the video. And for our next story, Spider-Man 2's marketing has officially begun. They've dropped like a live-action teaser for it, and let me just say, I loved this teaser. It gave me flashbacks to like the early 2010s, if you guys remember when video games would do this often, especially like the Call of Duty series. Every year for Call of Duty, they'd always have like a live-action trailer to promote the upcoming game's campaign or multiplayer. Those were always a treat to watch. It's a shame that less and less games have been doing that nowadays, but seeing this it really warmed my heart, really gave me the nostalgic vibes. As I've said before, I do not have either of the next-gen consoles yet, but I do plan on getting a PS5 this year because there are so many games not only that I need to catch up on, but so many games coming out that are just going to be straight up exclusive to PS5, Spider-Man 2 being the main one in terms of releases this year. Needless to say, seeing the marketing get started on it, I'm pretty hyped already. And for our next story, The Crew 3 was announced. Well, it isn't The Crew 3, it's called The Crew Motorfest. Unfortunately, it did leak out a little bit early that there was going to be a reveal event for this game, which is honestly kind of unfortunate. You know how amazing it would have been to go into my YouTube feed and just see this sitting there to surprise me? That would have been amazing because I am a huge fan of The Crew 1 and 2, but you know, leakers do what they gotta do. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not necessarily against leaks. I mean, I feel like sometimes leaks are kind of bad for the video game industry overall, at least from a consumer standpoint, because when the stuff gets leaked out so early, it kind of just like kills the whole surprise and wow factor when it finally gets announced. Do you know what I mean? But sometimes leaks are a good thing when it comes to, you know, warning consumers about some of the troubling developments happening behind the scenes, we'll say. They're a blessing and a curse, but I'm really excited for The Crew 3. This reveal was really different. It wasn't your typical gameplay trailer. This was more or less like the Xbox Developer Direct that we just had a week or two ago, where they talked about the games. Like, sure, they did show gameplay for sure, but it was mostly just the developers talking, showing some cool footage of like behind the scenes stuff and them working on the games. That's basically what this was. It wasn't necessarily just like a gameplay focused reveal like we've come to expect from most games, which, as I said in the last weekly GCap, like, I am all for stuff like this. I love seeing behind the scenes stuff. I love hearing directly from the developers, so I actually thought that this was really cool and actually furthered my hype for the upcoming game, just because I knew that there were so many passionate people working for the game. So you can already bet as soon as The Crew Motorfest comes out, I'll be picking it up. Also, just a quick note, this is one of the few upcoming games that will actually be coming to last gen as well as the new console, so that's pretty nice if you're still on an Xbox One or PS4. And for our next story, Naughty Dog is officially done with Uncharted, or so they say for now at least. You know how this stuff goes. There might be like a remaster or a reunion or a spin-off that comes out in like a decade or two, but for the time being, when it comes to mainline Uncharted games, I'll just read the quote directly. So they said, "For us, Uncharted was insanely successful. Uncharted 4 was one of our best-selling games, and we're able to put our final brushstroke on that story and say that we're done. We're moving on." And then they went on to talk about The Last of Us as well, which I found this really interesting. So they said, likewise with The Last of Us, it's up to us whether we want to continue it or not. And then they went on to talk a little bit more about how, basically, if they get any good ideas for The Last of Us Part 3, then they'll go ahead and make it, but otherwise, they feel like The Last of Us Part 2 left in a good spot where they can just say, okay, that story's complete, and they'll move on. But I just found that really interesting, because the way that they worded it made it sound like they're still not even in like the pre-production phase for Last of Us Part 3, but they're literally, it's nothing more than thoughts at this point as to, are we, like, we're just thinking about a story, like, are we gonna do this? I just find that interesting because I remember hearing some rumors and stuff that, you know, there was some things going on behind the scenes in relation to the pre-production, at least for Last of Us Part 3, but from the way that he was wording things in this quote, it made it seem like The Last of Us Part 3 is nothing more than a mere thought at Naughty Dog at the moment. So maybe they have other things in the works, maybe they have other projects that they're working on. I just found that really interesting. Maybe this is just like PR speak and they actually are a lot further on something like The Last of Us Part 3 behind the scenes and they just didn't want to say anything to spoil it for now, but I just found that interesting because it kind of does conflict with some of the rumors and leaks that we've been hearing before. Regardless, it is kind of sad to know that Uncharted is officially at its end, but at the same time, there was 4 games, we had Lost Legacy. I feel like that story is good where it's at. I feel like if we got any more, it might just be a little bit too much, but I feel like where it's at, it's like, it's at the perfect place. It's a good place to stop. I'm okay with that. When you're a fan of a series, sometimes you got to acknowledge when it's time for a series to just end before it's too much. You know what I mean? This next one's pretty juicy. So if you watched the last episode of Weekly GCAP, this was something that we talked about last week. EA is adding loot boxes to Skate, and yes, everybody hates this. If you want to know more about that, just go watch last week's episode. But the official Skate account on Twitter actually ended up responding to this. So they posted a picture with a caption, and the caption said, "A reminder of some of the things we shared in episode 1 of the boardroom last year." And then in that caption, they had an emoji next to it, like pointing down to a picture. And I think that picture was just like a screenshot from the video that they had linked in that same caption, and it said no pay to win, no map areas locked behind paywall, no paid loot boxes, and no gameplay advantages. And obviously all of that was in reference to their loot box system. So while I would like to take this on face value and say, hey, look, they addressed it, we're safe, they said there's not going to be any pay to win elements, we've also heard this so many times before from so many other live service games, and not even just specifically live service games, but just other games in general that have had these loot box systems. And then what do you know? They go ahead, they put in a bunch of pay-to-win elements, and before you know it, we're sitting here with another Battlefront 2 in our laps. So I want to take what they're saying at face value and truly trust them on this, but I've been burnt too many times in the past. We're just going to have to see how this one goes. Alright, and now just as a quick little intermission, I have a few things related to gaming subscription services that most of you probably use that I wanted to touch on. So first things first, obviously a new month just began. Happy February, everybody. Which also means both PlayStation and Xbox are releasing their new games with gold, PS Plus Essentials, etc. First things first, PS Plus Essentials games of February. We have Ollie Ollie World, Mafia Definitive Edition, Destiny Beyond Light expansion, which I definitely recommend getting that. That's a pretty good expansion, and then Evil Dead the game. If you ask me, that is a fantastic lineup. Like, PS Plus has honestly been killing it for like the last year. Obviously, there's a few months where the games are a little, do we really need this? Did this really need to be a part of it? But I'd say for like the last year, there haven't really been any months that were just downright bad. Sure, there have been a few stinker games here and there, but for the most part, each month has had something worth getting. And now let's look at Xbox Live Games with Gold. For the King and Guts and Goals. Yeah, Games with Gold has been dead for a long time now. I have no idea why they're still doing it. If you want those games, get them. You know, I'd always say get the games just so they're a part of your collection. You never know, you might get bored, might want to try it, and who knows? One of these might become your new favorite game. Personally, I already redeemed the first one for the King because that's the only one that's available right now. Guts and Goals will be available on the 15th. Honestly, if they just stop doing Games with Gold and stick to Game Pass, I don't think anybody would even notice. And while we're talking about subscription services, if you have a PlayStation 5, you need to hear this next part. Starting on May 9th, all of the PS Plus collection games will no longer be available to redeem. If you have already redeemed the PS Plus collection games that you get for getting a PS5 and becoming a PS Plus member on the PS5, then you are okay. You can keep those games. But if you have not redeemed them yet, you're gonna be losing access to them soon. So if you have a PS5, do it. If you don't have a PS5 but plan on getting one, then make sure that you get one before May 9th. Or if you plan on getting a PS5 but you think you won't be able to get it before May 9th, it may not be a bad idea to hit up one of your friends or go to a friend or family member's house and be like, hey, I know you got a PS5, can I sign it on my account, redeem some games real quick, because it is 20 games, some of those including Batman, Arkham Knight, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Uncharted 4, Bloodborne. Like, these are games that you do not want to miss out on. So if you don't have any of the games in the PS Plus collection and you want to redeem them just in case, however you got to do it, just make sure you do it. And again, as long as you redeem them before May 9th, it doesn't matter if you download them or not, you'll still have access to them in your account. You just won't be able to redeem them after May 9th, if you get what I'm trying to say. I figured I'd mention that just so nobody misses out on 20 free games. Now, this next story I actually find really interesting, and it made me gain a lot of respect for Phil Spencer. Like, out of all the heads, you know, of the gaming companies, Phil Spencer has honestly been the one that I've been rooting for the most. I have a huge amount of respect for this guy, and this interview he just did with IGN a few days ago only increased the respect I have for him. So not to be too bashful here, but do you guys remember about 2 weeks ago, we talked about the head at Ubisoft and how basically he was blaming the company's failures on his employees. Ouch. Yeah, there was a lot of controversy around that one for good reason. Anyway, before we go down that rabbit hole, Phil Spencer actually had an interview with somebody at IGN. I'll just go ahead and straight up read the article to you guys. Phil Spencer told IGN that the accountability for Xbox's lack of enough releases falls on him. However, Spencer added that he feels really good about the next 12 months for Xbox. He said, "Our commitment to our fans is that we need to have a steady release of great games that people can play on our platform, and we didn't do enough of that in 2022, there's no doubt." He added, "And fundamentally, that's on me. I'm the head of the business. The commitment we have to our customers to continue to deliver great games is something I take seriously, the teams take seriously, and 2022 was too light in games. We're excited too about getting to roll into 2023 having the developer direct. I felt really good about the games that we were showing, and also knowing that Starfield is a game that we're going to highlight in its own show, and then just start off 2023 with good momentum. Like you said, I think we needed that." Like I said, after reading that article, my respect for Phil Spencer just grew even more. Like, the fact that he just sat there and said, "Yeah, I'm the head of the business. That's on me." Sometimes the higher-ups in the suits get a bad rep, but you know, not all of them are bad, and Phil Spencer's one of them. He's a good guy. He's also been in the business for quite a number of years, so he's probably just really good at PR speak as well, but hey, it's working. Hopefully the people over at Ubisoft can take some notes and, you know, hopefully at least start to try to care about the reputation of their company. Next up, this one is honestly a massive bummer for me. E3 will not feature Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft, aka the three biggest gaming companies. This one honestly made me really sad when I read it. E3 is something I looked forward to every single year, and I was hoping that Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, like at least one of them would be there this year, especially considering that Microsoft had just said that they will be at E3, but that's something that we're about to get to in a second. So once this information had leaked out, the ESA decided to respond to it. It's about 5 paragraphs long, and we've done enough reading in this episode as is, so I'll just kind of sum it up for you. Basically, they just said that they're confident in their partnership with ReedPop and that they still have a lot in store for the event. Originally, at least Nintendo and Xbox were both planning to show up. However, Nintendo decided to pull out just because after Zelda, apparently they do not have any more quote-unquote heavy hitters for the rest of the year, which means after what, springtime when they release Zelda, is nothing big going to be happening for Nintendo the rest of the year? I mean, I know there's been rumors about like Metroid, and then of course they have Pikmin 4 coming out, but is there really nothing else happening that they consider to be a heavy hitter after Zelda? And then furthermore, Xbox apparently wasn't planning to be there in the first place, so despite the reports that we had actually talked about a few episodes ago about Xbox being at E3, usually when Xbox is quote-unquote at E3, they're actually doing their own event that takes place about a block away from the E3 building, and usually, you know, there's like some cross-promotion and stuff right there. Like, I believe if you have a badge to get into E3, that would also allow you, in years past at least, to get into the Xbox event. But I guess just recently, Xbox decided that they're not going to be utilizing that cross-promotion, and they're just going to consider their event to be something entirely separate. So technically, yeah, none of the big three are going to be at E3 in any capacity this year. But hey, the ESA seems like they're still confident about the event, so we'll have to see what they have in store. I mean, obviously, just because, you know, the big three aren't going to be there doesn't mean it's the end of the world. Obviously, there's dozens of other gaming companies and publishers and developers that can be there and announce some huge games. It just makes me a little sad because, you know, it is nice hearing directly from one of the big three to see what they have up the pipeline, because when it comes to basically any of their first-party games, they're always like a huge deal. And for the most part, besides a few exceptions like Halo Infinite, they're always like amazing games. So it's kind of sad that we won't be hearing from them at E3, but hey, who knows? I'm keeping an open mind. I'm still going to be watching E3, and let's hope that there's going to be enough other developers and publishers there to carry the show, and hopefully we can get some pretty mind-blowing announcements. Every time that news like this comes up, it always kind of raises the question of like, do we really still need E3? Is E3 going to continue after this year? And honestly, I think E3 will still stick around for at least a couple more years yet. I just don't know if it's something that's necessarily gonna last forever, because you see Xbox starting to do more of their own events, you see PlayStation starting to do more of their own events, and other companies are kind of taking that approach and taking notes from them and starting to do their own events. So for at least the next couple foreseeable years, I think E3 will continue. I do think that eventually it is going to see its end. And I honestly do think it's going to get to a point where it's kind of just like a week or two of back-to-back-to-back live streams from each of the big three, along with other publishers and developers that have stuff that they want to announce. Again, it's really sad, but with the future and technology and digital live streaming, all that, I honestly just see it kind of going that way, because let's be honest, for nerds like me, I love the thought of going to E3 and sitting amongst a bunch of other sweaty, nerdy gamers, but but that isn't exactly ideal for everybody else, and it isn't always ideal to, you know, have to fly all the way out there, sleep in a hotel, and that's not even to mention the fact that obviously prices have been rising like crazy, so trying to go to E3 this year, I'm sure people are gonna have to save up at least double, if not triple, what they would have in years past to be able to even afford that trip in the first place. But regardless, I'm still excited for E3, and I'll stay cautiously optimistic. The way I see it, as long as it isn't like that Disney event from a couple months ago where basically all they did was sit there and announce mobile games, then I think it'll be alright. And for our next story, Star Wars Jedi Survivor has unfortunately been delayed, but the way I see it, even though I was super hyped for March and I was really looking forward to getting my hands on the game, it's better for the game to get delayed so then it can actually be finished and polished on launch. Thankfully, it isn't too big of a delay. It just got delayed from March 17th until April 28th, so that's literally just like 6 weeks. Thankfully, it's nothing too crazy. In the blog post, they were just saying that the game needs some final touches and polish to be done to it, so you know what? Take the 6 weeks. And hey, that original release date that they had before the delay was actually really close to Resident Evil 4 Remake, so who knows, this may actually be a smart business move in the end and they didn't even know it. Because while I don't think that RE4 Remake would absolutely obliterate Star Wars and would kill that game's sales or anything like that, the same way that like Elden Ring killed Forbidden West sales last year, I know for a fact that there's some overlap in those fan bases, and I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody that is a fan of both of those properties. So now, hey, instead of gamers having to be like, oh, do I want to get RE4 now and wait for Star Wars, or vice versa, now they can get RE4 and it gives them another month to save up for Jedi Survivor. While I love having a bunch of AAA game releases back to back to back, sometimes it is good just to kind of spread them out. And for our next story, the Xbox Series consoles prices will be increasing in Japan by 5,000 yen, which equals roughly 39 USD. This has been a really bizarre console generation. Obviously, there's been a lot of stuff happening in the world that has resulted in the prices needing to go up. But it's just crazy because at this point in previous life cycles, we would have been looking towards price drops, you know, probably a slim revision at this point. But no, we're sitting with the same consoles and they're going up in price. Japan is the only region that they have talked about raising the prices for the consoles in. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on this one and letting you guys know if the prices increase in any other regions. At this point, let's just cross our fingers and hope they don't go up anymore because it's been hard enough to get these consoles as is. And while scalping hasn't been as much of an issue within the last couple months, the more they raise the prices, the more excuses the scalpers have, and that's the last thing that we need. It's also odd considering the chip shortage has been reportedly coming to an end. There has been more chips available, so I'm wondering why the prices need to go up now when they never went up while the chip shortage was at its highest. But hey, I'm just a nerd sitting behind a computer screen. Obviously, I don't know all the numbers, but things must still be pretty rough if they had to increase the prices. Alright, we got 3 more stories to go, and this, this next one, I honestly didn't even know that this game existed until I read the headline, but Rumbleverse will be shutting down February 28th, 2023. Do you guys want to know when this game released? August 11th of 2022. Apparently, this was like a battle royale with wrestling elements. I honestly, I know nothing about this game, okay? I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I'm just reading the headline. I have no idea what this game was, what it was about. Apparently, it was a live service game. It had battle passes, the whole, you know, usual live service thing. But yeah, after like 6.5 months of being out, I guess this game's shutting down. Just goes to show that the old copy and pasted live service battle royale formula doesn't work for every game, and well, clearly it didn't work here either. Alright, now this next story, I genuinely shed a tear when I read it. You guys may think I'm being dramatic, you may think I'm lying. I genuinely cried when I read the last part of this story. Alright, we'll kind of have to handle this story in parts. So for the first part, Apex Mobile is going to be shutting down. I'll just read the quote directly. Despite Apex Mobile's strong start, the ongoing experience was not going to meet the expectations of our players. After months of working with our development partner, we have made the mutual decision to sunset the mobile game. Our love for the Apex universe and our players remains unchanged. We look forward to exploring the universe, its characters, and its stories along with you. And then they're shutting down another mobile game, except this mobile game isn't actually out yet. This one was just in development, and they had announced it a couple months ago, but I guess it's not even going to get to see the light of day. This being Battlefield Mobile, however, their quote on this was a bit longer, so we'll just kind of sum this one up. They basically just said, Battlefield Mobile doesn't really fit the ecosystem and vision that they have for the franchise and would like to revert and keep those efforts fixated on evolving BF 2042 and, you know, fixing up that game. Lord knows they need all hands on deck to fix that one. And apparently they're in pre-production for future Battlefield titles already, so at least they're not giving up on the Battlefield IP. Honestly, after the disaster of 2042, I was worried that we wouldn't see any more Battlefield games, or at least that it would be a while until we saw another one, but I'm glad that they're continuing on. For the next game, if they just stick to their roots and did whatever they did in Battlefield 4, we'll be fine. I mean, heck, even Battlefield 1, that game was absolutely phenomenal. It doesn't matter if it's a modern game, near future, in the past. Whatever they did to make Battlefield 1 and 4 work, they just need to do that again. They don't need to do all this pointless innovation like they tried to do with Battlefield 2042. 2042. I'm a huge supporter of the idea of innovation, but I'm not a huge supporter of the idea of innovation and changes just for the sake of it, especially when it doesn't even fit the IP that they're trying to push the innovations into. Little specialist system in 2042. Oh my god, get that out of here. Apparently they're dropping an update though that's gonna fix the specialist system and will actually have classes in 2042. I've been skeptical to go back to the game. For me, first impressions really leave a lasting impression, and that first impression of 2042 was just so bad for me that I honestly have not been able to return to the game. I've tried booting it up and I turn it on and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to play it, and thus I haven't played it. I boot it up, I sit at the menu, and I get off before I even play a match. It's just, the first impression truly hurt it that bad for me. So with the changes that they've been saying they've been making, I might dive back in here soon and see if it's actually worth investing some time into to play. But anyway, there is another game that they quietly shut down behind the scenes, and this is the one that genuinely made me shed a tear. I am a huge fan of the Titanfall series, especially Titanfall 2 and its campaign. The campaign in that game was S tier. I love that game's campaign to death. I've played it multiple times. I've honestly been debating doing another playthrough on it here soon. But reportedly, behind the scenes, they have shut down a game known as Titanfall Legends. And what this was a single-player experience that existed in a connected Titanfall and Apex Legends universe. This one was going to be developed by Respawn just like the other Titanfall games. And man, as soon as I heard this, I literally cried because this game has been rumored and leaked for a while now. We knew it was in development, and I was so unbelievably hyped for this game, and the fact that it has been canceled is just, it literally broke my heart, and I know it broke the heart of many other Titanfall fans as well. To this day, I still play Titanfall 2 multiplayer any chance that I get, and the fact that this franchise and IP is just like dead in the water now, and they canceled the last game that they were working on in this franchise, is just, it genuinely makes me feel so empty, man. I'm hoping that this project can get picked up by somebody else, or maybe enough outcry from the community can make this game a reality still, but it's not looking hopeful. I'm tempted to turn the entirety of Twitter into a SpongeBob episode and rally up all the Titanfall fans to go on strike against EA until they resume development on this game. Now, obviously, I didn't want to end the show off on a sad note, so I have one nice story for you guys to close this one out. The Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance 10th anniversary is coming up, and first off, let me just say, that makes me feel so old. I remember getting this game back at launch and playing the crap out of it back in the day, and I can't believe it's been 10 years since then, man. But anyway, on February 21st, 2023, Platinum Games will be unveiling the Metal Gear Rising anniversary art on Platinum Games' official Twitter account to commemorate the 10th anniversary. Now, that makes me curious, because obviously all they talked about here was just unveiling some anniversary art. And if this was happening, say, even just a year ago, I probably would have said, oh, yeah, that's all it is. I don't think there's going to be anything else to it. But now, considering the fact that Konami is actually making something besides pachinko machines and they're actually trying to make video games again, I wonder, could we be getting something for Metal Gear Rising that they haven't talked about yet? I don't want to go getting anybody hyped up or speculate too hard, but what if for this 10th anniversary, they don't just unveil some kind of art? What if they unveil some art and also say, hey, there's an event planned, yada yada yada, and next thing you know, we're getting maybe a modern port? Because the only way to play this game is either A, on a PlayStation 3, B, you could play it on an Xbox 360 or on an Xbox One/Series X through backwards compatibility, and then I believe the game is also available on Steam, which means, yeah, on PC you have a reliable way to play, but for folks on console, you know, on the PlayStation side, you really don't have a modern way to play the game, and for folks over on the Xbox, we have to play through backwards compatibility. So what if we saw a modern port, maybe a remaster? I feel like that would be awesome, or heck, now this is really wishful thinking, but what if they announce like a sequel or a spin-off? Now that's really wishful thinking, I know, and that's like hyper speculating, but what if? Could you imagine? Or the best of both worlds, what if we got all of that? What if we got a modern port / remaster to build up some hype for their next game in the Metal Gear Rising universe? I'm just saying, that would be pretty freaking sick, and I think it would sell amazingly well. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is my favorite Metal Gear game. I know some Metal Gear Solid fans are probably gonna freak out at me for saying that, but dude, I seriously love Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance that much. So again, this is all just speculation, but if they do end up doing something special for Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance's 10th anniversary, I'm just telling y'all right now, nobody will be able to contain my hype. And yeah, there we have it. That's all the stories that I had for you guys this week. Now I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about everything that we talked about here today? Whether it be Skate's response to the Lootbox controversy, or Naughty Dog saying that they're done with Uncharted, or E3 not featuring any of the big three gaming companies. Maybe you have your own theories for MGR's 10th anniversary. Whatever it is, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I do these episodes every single Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern. But with that, I'll see you guys back here next weekend. Thank you for watching. Have an amazing day and an amazing weekend. Stay beautiful. I love you all. Peace.